When a movie plot twist is done right, it can become an enduring part of the pop culture bubble for decades and decades, sometimes even becoming independently famous away from the film that it originated from. The Sixth Sense, Psycho, Fight Club, Empire Strikes Back, mention any of these films and chances are you'll end up in a discussion about their twists almost immediately, with their shock value, story ramifications, and general cleverness making for some satisfying narrative turns that are still entertaining to watch even after all this time. But the dangerous thing about plot twists is that because they're meant to be big surprises that reframe the movie's narrative, fans can often feel like a story has promised them one thing only for a bizarre and unwarranted twist to come out of nowhere and give them another. Worse still, some twists don't seem to serve any purpose other than providing a cheap bit of shock value, punishing viewers who've invested their loyalty in a story by plucking an odd reveal or pointless character death out of thin air. We all love a good twist, who doesn't? But what we don't love is feeling like our time investment has been wasted. I'm Ellie with Whatculture, here with movie plot twists that punished loyal fans. The random giant monster, the Cloverfield paradox. The first Cloverfield movie was a fantastic standalone flick that didn't need to become a franchise, but follow-up 10 Cloverfield Lane was surprisingly good, a claustrophobic thriller with a glorious John Goodman performance and a fun, monster-infused ending. The Cloverfield paradox, however, was a massive letdown. If viewed in a bubble, it would probably come across as a solid sci-fi horror with a terrific cast of actors and some creative stomach-turning death scenes. But we don't live in a bubble. The main problem was how its marketing led us to believe that we'd get some definitive answers regarding the Cloverfield universe, with a specific focus on that original 2008 movie. Where did the monster come from? What is it? Hell, the description box for the film's official trailer still reads, 10 years ago, something arrived. Today, we now know why. But that description was a complete lie. In one final twist, the movie leaves us with the head of an enormous Cloverfield monster poking through the sky. Its size means that it can't possibly be the same monster we saw in 2008, so where did it come from? What is it? And why is it so massive? Fans had hoped for answers, but instead they walked away with even more questions. David Dunn's anticlimactic death, Glass. The biggest problem with M. Night Shyamalan's movies is that audiences now expect there to be some kind of mind-blowing reveal, and looking at Glass, it seems as though this expectation has now infected the way the filmmaker approaches his work. While there isn't a twist like the one in The Sixth Sense, something that changes the way you look at the entire movie, there are a couple of smaller curveballs throughout. Some are harmless, like the fact that the big epic battle atop the skyscraper doesn't actually take place, but one that just doesn't sit right is the way that David Dunn is unceremoniously killed off. Fans yelled about a sequel to Unbreakable for ages, cries that Shyamalan undoubtedly heard, and a big reason why we all wanted that sequel so badly was to see David in full-on vigilante mode, roaming the streets at night, protecting the innocent and stopping crimes. And while we did get a small taste of that in Glass, David is instead held captive for most of the runtime. Then he's drowned in a puddle outside the facility, killed off in the most unsatisfying way imaginable. Because hey, Shyamalan's got a twist, right? Tom Webster isn't real, Last Christmas. From the second its debut trailer came out, fans were predicting, despite the film being an original story, what the twist in festive rom-com Last Christmas would be. Nobody even knew that it definitely would have a twist, but the footage was so clearly pointing towards a certain outcome that it just seemed like an inevitability. Well, spoiler alert, it was. Like a train speeding towards its next pre-assigned destination, the film reveals that Tom Webster isn't actually real and that he can only be seen by miserable 30-something retail worker Kate. Movie fans spent months saying that this would be the twist, and lo and behold, we were right. Even then, a lot of folks may have bought tickets with a glimmer of hope that the talented duo of director Paul Feig and writer Emma Thompson could come up with something a bit less predictable, but sadly, they could not. Watching this movie and expecting something other than the blindingly obvious, and then getting the blindingly obvious, it felt like punishment for buying a ticket. Laurie didn't actually kill Michael Myers, Halloween Resurrection. The Halloween timeline was simplified with the release of Halloween 2018, which erased every other film in the franchise since the original. This hard reset was a good thing for several reasons, getting rid of a bunch of terrible movies for one thing, and thankfully it means that this forehead-slapping twist from the start of Halloween Resurrection is no longer canon. At the end of Halloween H2O, heroine Laurie Strode kills Michael Myers by chopping off his head. It was a really badass moment and would have been an excellent place to end the franchise and leave Michael dead and buried. But wait! Laurie didn't actually kill Michael. For no apparent reason other than money, Dimension Films chose to resurrect the pale-faced menace in Halloween Resurrection, explaining that Laurie, who dies early in the film, had killed a paramedic who Michael had swapped places with. The paramedic's throat had been crushed so he couldn't speak, but for some reason he didn't try taking the mask off. Okay then. It's a dumb twist in and of itself, but one of the worst things about it was how it completely ruined Laurie's character. Fans who'd stuck with her for decades finally got to see her win at the end of H2O, only for this twist to make her seem like a bit of an idiot, and for her life to be taken shortly afterwards. Sticking with this franchise through 2 decades and countless crappy sequels, finally receiving a decent conclusion and being rewarded with yet another crappy sequel that undid said decent conclusion, does our loyalty mean nothing, Hollywood? Blofeld was behind everything, Spectre. There were a lot of high hopes heading into Spectre, with director Sam Mendes having just delivered the previous entry in the series, Skyfall, a movie that some would put among the greatest all-time Bond films. But Spectre failed to hit those same heights. Lacking Skyfall's flair and feeling like a regression back to a more traditional and formulaic Bond movie, it was a dull affair that didn't do much to surprise or even excite, despite a massive attempt to do both of those things midway through its runtime. Coming face to face with Blofeld inside his remote desert base, Bond learns that the villain was responsible for all the bad stuff that had happened to him in the previous films, from the death of Vesper to the activities of villains like Dominic Green and Silver. The twist was such a painfully obvious retcon of the events in Craig's previous films that it was impossible to buy into, a transparent attempt to quickly and easily beef up the bad guy levels of the Spectre organization, and of Blofeld himself. Even worse, the twist had a negative effect on Craig's first 3 Bond films. If you were a fan of any of the villains from those last films, this retroactively neutered them and essentially made them henchmen doing someone else's bidding. There's nothing worse than a sequel that detracts from its predecessors. Marie was the killer all along, high tension. The frustrating thing about High Tension's dumb twist is that the movie itself is highly entertaining. The polar opposite of Last Christmas, here we have a gotcha reveal that is about as unpredictable as you could imagine, but is no less annoying considering the 90 minutes you've already invested in the movie. Directed by gorehound Alexandre Aja, the flick follows best friends Marie and Alex as they head to the latter's family home for a weekend of studying. Unfortunately, that study time goes down the drain when a serial killer interrupts proceedings, murdering Alex's family and pursuing the 2 besties with reckless abandon. And then, out of nowhere, a reveal. Marie was the killer all along. There are numerous reasons why this doesn't make sense, but the worst thing about it is that this means that the movie completely disrespects your time. It just pulls a random twist out of a hat near the end, goes, well, there you go, and then rolls the credits, making those first 90 minutes feel utterly pointless. It's annoying as hell and punishes you for sticking with it through to the end. John Connor is a Terminator, Terminator Genisys. On most levels, Terminator Genisys does not work. From various miscastings to the way that it chose to retread story beats that had already been executed in a far more skillful manner, the movie was just a waste of everyone's time, and the franchise would be better off if it was suddenly wiped from existence. And on top of its general pointlessness, Genisys also chose to annoy the hell out of fans. One of the twists in the film, if you can even call it a twist, is that John Connor has been turned into a deadly Terminator, specifically the T-3000, to ensure that Skynet can rise to power. What's odd about this whole thing is that there didn't seem to be a good reason why the T-3000 had to appear as John. It's not like the movie dragged it out and saved the revelation for a third act punch in the gut twist, so it just came across as a cheap trick and a gimmick, something crazy to put in the marketing to get people talking. And talk people did, but not positively. All this twist really did was anger people who viewed John Connor as the ultimate hero, the guy who we wanted to see kick Terminator's ass and ensure the survival of humanity, not become the enemy he was literally born to fight. Credence is a Dumbledore. Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald was a mess. From its complicated mishmash of subplots to its lack of action scenes and its mistakes with established Potter lore, it was a huge boring letdown coming off the promising and fun debut film. But even if the experience as a whole was terrific, there would still be a big question mark hovering over it because of its confusing ending twist, which saw Credence Barebone outed as Aurelius Dumbledore, Albus Dumbledore's long-lost brother. For one thing, Aurelius had never been mentioned in either the books or the movies up until this point, and considering that the Deathly Hallows novel delved deeper into Dumbledore's youth and home life, it doesn't make sense that Aurelius wasn't even name-dropped. The twist also doesn't make sense timeline-wise, with Credence, if he is Albus's brother, being too young for the year that the movie takes place in. For years, Potter fans have been told specific facts about the Wizarding universe. It's already been established that Albus had a brother, Aberforth, and a sister, Ariana, with nobody else being brought up. To suddenly drop Aurelius out of nowhere feels like a slap in the face to people who've been following this saga for the past 20 plus years, and a cheap, not to mention illogical way to try and make this spin-off series feel just as important as the 7 primary Harry Potter stories. Newt and Hicks are both dead. Alien 3. One of the reasons why James Cameron's Aliens is so great is its varied cast of characters. Everyone feels distinct, well-written, and entertaining to watch in their own unique way, making it easy to find at least 1 or 2 characters that you've no problem latching onto. 2 of the characters that people latched onto the most, however, were Newt and Hicks. The young girl who Ripley takes under her wing and the cool, composed and brave colonial marine are among Aliens' most memorable personalities. And since they both survived to the end of the film, there was an expectation that we'd get to see their stories continue in the inevitable 3rd Alien movie. But surprise! They died. One of the first bits of information that David Fincher's messy Alien 3 throws at us is that Newt and Hicks are both dead, an unexpected turn of events that seemed highly unnecessary, considering how much fans loved those 2 characters. It was a cruel punishment for people who were excited to see more of them, and the movie struggled to recover from this dodgy start. Alien 3 had a notoriously troubled production, so it's understandable that not everything in the film would flow seamlessly or even make sense. But why would you get rid of 2 of the best things about the previous movie in such an unceremonious and frankly lazy manner? John Connor gets killed off, Terminator Dark Fate. Poor John Connor just can't catch a break, can he? This one is a real shame because while Dark Fate isn't perfect, it did a lot of things right and could have taken the series in a positive direction. Unfortunately, the movie upset a lot of fans within its first 10 minutes, which didn't inspire many people to return for repeat viewings, nor did it make the movie feel like a natural continuation of Terminator 2, something that it had been billed as from the very beginning. The introductory scene finds Sarah and John Connor relaxing by a beach, the world apparently safe from the robotic threat of Skynet. But suddenly, a T-800 appears out of nowhere and kills John, sending the movie down a completely different path from the one many expected. There's nothing wrong with the movie trying something surprising, but this particular choice didn't seem warranted in the slightest. At the end of T2, John and Sarah stop Skynet and ride off into the distance, hopeful for the future. To then immediately kill John in such a blasé fashion feels like Dark Fate is ignoring that ending, not building on it, almost like the filmmakers wanted to get him out of the way so that they could tell the story they really wanted to tell, rather than the one that made sense in terms of following T2, which is what fans had hoped to see all along.